Welcome to the Embodiment Podcast. This show is for you if you see the body as more than a brain taxi. It's for people interested in coming home to the body as a holistic aspect of who we are and how we live. Episodes contain practical tips, exercises you can take away, and interviews with embodiment specialists from around the world. I'm your host, Mark Walsh. So joining me on the show today, Dan Doherty. So Dan has a strong background in Tai Chi. He's written 4 books on that subject. Originally from Glasgow, though ended up in the Hong Kong police for a while. He's also a full contact champion. We'll get into a little bit about what that is, and chairman of the Tai Chi Union. So Dan, welcome.
Thanks very much, Mark. Welcome.
So how did you get interested in the body? What was your way into this?
I was waiting with my mother to meet my younger brother, who was a hurdler, a very good hurdler. On a Saturday afternoon, it was a beautiful day in Glasgow, as always. And we saw these guys in pajamas, white pajamas, wearing coloured belts outside the sports centre, doing some martial movements. My mother said, well, you're going to university, you better do some exercise. What about this? I thought, that'll suit me just fine. So I went to the next class, and I've been doing martial arts ever since.
Great. And then actually took you to Asia, right? So you kind of almost like the martial arts movie, kind of going out to Asia and getting involved in full contact and all sorts of things.
Well, I wanted to be a lawyer initially, so I did a law degree in Glasgow University. I was doing karate in Glasgow for 4 years. I wanted to go to the Far East. I got interested in Tai Chi. I thought there's something to this, but these books are not convincing.
Yeah.
So I used to go to the Far East. So I didn't want to go without a job to go to. The Observer and Sunday Times Magazine were running ads for inspectors in the Royal Hong Kong Police. And I applied and went through the interview process and was selected. In 1975, I went to Hong Kong as a Royal Hong Kong Police recruit inspector.
Interesting. And how was being a policeman in Hong Kong at that time? I'm very curious about that.
It was a very difficult time in the police because there was a lot of corruption. The governor had brought in some emergency measures to deal with that. Nobody trusted anybody else. The new boys were particularly not trusted. The new boys. So it was a very difficult time.
Okay, and there was, I imagine Hong Kong at some points had sort of gang crime and kind of different interesting things happening.
Yeah, my first CID posting was after about 1.5 years. I was sent to CID Wan Chai, which is a red light area in Hong Kong Island. And we often had gang fights. Usually two triads like Chinese mafia kind of gang fights in the streets with people using machetes and sometimes martial arts weapons.
And in my experience of Hong Kong, I only spent a couple of weeks out there, that on the one hand, you've got this super urban environment, but also this beautiful countryside around it that really surprised me when I was out there. And it is literally a place where today you will see people practicing Tai Chi and other martial arts just in the park. It seems to be a lot of martial arts out there.
Well, the Hong Kong government, to their credit, in 1976 started a program of introducing Tai Chi exercise in all the housing estates. There's many, many housing estates in Hong Kong. This is very built up, very busy place, although there are rural areas. So this greatly improved the health of the people in Hong Kong, and a lot of the people who took up Tai Chi later became teachers themselves. Yeah,
it's a bit of a mecca for the internal martial arts, isn't it?
More Tai Chi than anything else, actually.
Right. Okay, so I imagine you had some adventures as a police officer out there at that time.
Yeah, well, I was in charge of the Kowloon Regional Vice Squad for 7 months. So I was operational on a lot of different jobs.
And you were studying Tai Chi at that time? Who was your teacher out there?
Well, what happened was it couldn't have been easier. The guy who taught self-defense, chief physical training instructor at the Royal Hong Kong Police Training School, was an Aikido master, but he'd also done Tai Chi.
Uh-huh.
He became kind of a mentor to me. He was a very good man, George Button, and he introduced me to his teacher of Tai Chi, a man called Chen Jin Hung, who then became my teacher. He of course, he was very happy to learn, and George had introduced me, and I never looked back, really. It was so easy to get there and get the connection.
And I come from Aikido background, and I once met Ken Cotier, who was the English guy who trained with the founder of Aikido and ended up running the Hong Kong Aikikai, one of the main people for a while. I wonder if you bumped into him.
No, but I really enjoyed training in police Aikido with George Button. You know,
okay.
This was Tai Chi in approach.
Uh-huh. Interesting. So, what is Tai Chi? For those people listening to this, they may only have a sort of stereotyped image of sort of old people moving slowly in the park or something. What is Tai Chi?
There's a lot of different things. The correct term is Tai Chi Chuan. Chuan means fist, so therefore it's a system of boxing or fighting, based on the philosophical concept of Tai Chi, the supreme ultimate, the supreme pole or poles, yin and yang. So basically, it's using change and duality. So we use evasion and counterattack rather than attack normally. We have a saying in Tai Chi Classics, so opponent doesn't move, we don't move. Opponent starts to move, we've already moved. So we're kind of reacting to whatever comes at us.
Excellent. And people may notice it more of a health system, but I've just seen some footage of YouTube of people kind of hitting you and jumping on you, and you've got this full contact background as well. So that might be quite different from the kind of normal view people might have of what Tai Chi is.
Absolutely, Mark. So what Tai Chi is, there are 5 aspects to it. There's the hand form, which is what people generally assume to be Tai Chi. All these soft, slow movements, all people doing in the park. Then there's what we call pushing hands, which is a number of different partnered exercises, training footwork, sensitivity at close quarters, evasion, use of different types of force. Then there's the actual self-defense, the Sanshou as they call it, which is dispersing hands. That Sanshou has got the following divisions: Dimak, which is pressure points. You either strike a point or you put force on a point. Shuai Jiao, which is wrestling. Diepu, which is knocking down and then striking, or striking then knocking down. And then there's the 3 weapons, major weapons: the spear, the saber, and the straight sword. Then there's what we call Neigong, internal strength. There are 24 yin-yang exercises. They have meditative, therapeutic, and martial purposes. And that's what enables the participant to withstand blows or to withstand somebody jumping on from a height of 6 feet onto the abdomen.
So this internal, there's a lot to it, clearly, more than most people might think. And I'm just starting to learn about Tai Chi. We had a couple of other Tai Chi teachers on the show. What is internal strength for those that may be newer to that term?
Okay, it's not purely the use of muscles and sinews. It's using the body in a skillful way. So when we take impact, it's not by tensing up, it's more by absorbing, whether people jumping on us or striking us. The Neigong refines technique. It's repeating a simple exercise again and again, maybe 100 times, or it's holding a specific posture, training and strengthening the joints and tendons. So basically, the soft stuff doesn't work if you don't do some hard exercise. For the Chinese full contact, to give you an idea, we would need to train for 3 months beforehand, before taking part in the competition. We would train internal strength exercises, an hour a day, punch with light weights, weighing about 4 pounds in each hand for 20 minutes, 3,000 punches in that time. We do pad and bag work, but without the hands being bound like in boxing. We would do handstands, we would do rolls, we would do sparring, we would wrestle with the equipment on. These fights were with gloves, but not usually boxing gloves. The type of gloves they initially used in Hong Kong were 4-ounce gloves with the hands not being wrapped.
Yeah, so this was almost the precursor to some things that come today, and it's inspired, like, Enter the Dragon and things like that. The kind of Hong Kong full contact tournaments, as I understood it, sort of almost anything goes and very lightweight gloves. This is a pretty full on tournament, right? This wasn't not for the faint-hearted.
I saw in one tournament my teacher organized a young boy of 17 in the last fight against another 17-year-old, killed by one kick to the neck. So, yeah, it could be very dangerous.
And what motivated you to enter into such a dangerous thing? I mean, it's pretty terrifying and get killed with a kick to the neck.
Well, the thing is, I wanted to become a professional Tai Chi instructor even before I went to Hong Kong. So the only way to get a reputation was to take part in some competitions. Yeah. My aim was to be a champion, an international champion. I wasn't interested in fighting per se, although it was a good experience. Yeah. It was to have the credibility to teach Tai Chi as a complete art. It does add a certain weight, and I've seen parallels of this in other places where
someone's done something intense, maybe competitive, and then it's quite different when you hear about the sort of soft side of things from that person than someone that's never kind of been on the sharp end of things.
Yeah, I think people know about the soft side, but the important thing is to be able to change. In Tai Chi, as in life, it's important to be hard when you need to be hard, and to be soft when you need to be soft, and be able to change between them appropriately. I have to say to your viewers, your listeners, I've got Parkinson's.
Well, why don't we talk about that for a minute then, if you don't mind, and feel free to, decline. But how is it, as someone who has spent their whole life in body and movement arts to have Parkinson's? This is something I've seen my own mentor, Paul Linden, suffer with over the years and, do his best to manage. How is that?
Well, I think it's an excellent experience to understand other people's problems, physical problems. If you have yourself a serious problem like Parkinson's. When I first was diagnosed, I spent 2 years without medication. I tried to use just Tai Chi and diet, but I was getting worse and worse. Now I've got a balance of good medication with an excellent neurologist. I still practice Tai Chi every day, no matter what, especially I don't do forms much anymore, although I teach them. And I've got a brother who's got Parkinson's as well, so it's not because of contact or something. He never had a fight in his life, but it's there, and I've got to deal with it. And Tai Chi is excellent for balance, for posture, for coordination, and all these are things that are threatened by Parkinson's.
Yeah, I know with Paul Linden, my teacher, it's been almost like an arms race between sort of his kind of skills and working with it and the progression of the disease. And, to go from a full contact champion to someone, with fairly developed Parkinson's, I imagine it's frustrating or humbling, or I can't imagine really, but I'm certainly curious.
It's humbling. It makes you, there were so many things I thought I knew, and I've taught a lot of people who had all kinds of physical problems. Now I think I have more empathy with them than I had before. Yeah,
it's difficult. I remember being, young athletic Aikido student, to kind of have empathy for other people who are sort of older or just, unlucky and suffering in some way physically. When you're that kind of strong athletic guy, it's just simply, I didn't get ill for years, and it was very difficult for me to empathize with anyone that even had a cold, because it's just not something that ever happened to me.
Absolutely.
Well, I hope you didn't mind me asking about that. It seemed like it was, right there. So, I hope that was okay to ask about.
No problem.
Okay, so something I'm absolutely fascinated with is yin and yang. I would love to get your perspective on this. Obviously, the heart of Tai Chi, and you were just talking about change and going from hard to soft. Please tell us as much as you would like about yin and yang.
Well, a lot of it is kind of Zen. You probably heard that term before. There's a concept in Taoism called Wu Wei. Wu means without, and Wei means acting or doing. So this is often considered to be passivity. In fact, it's not really passivity. There's an excellent British writer and kind of spiritual guru, Alan Watts. He was initially a judo man, then he went to Tai Chi. He was very famous in the 1950s and 60s in places like San Francisco, the hippie crowd and all that learned from him. And Watts gives an excellent definition of Wu Wei. So some people think it's about doing nothing, waiting for things to happen. And Watts said what Wu Wei is you're on a boat on a river and you want to go upstream. Now you can paddle against the current and force your way. Put it in that and it's not going to do the boat a lot of good either. Or what you can do, you can put up a sail and use the wind to take you against the current. And that's what Wu Wei is taking advantage of the situation that's there.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example from a martial arts point of view. On my website, there's a short video of myself doing a full contact fight in Malaysia against a black guy weighing more than 300 pounds. The fight started, he kicked me, punched me 3 times in the head, and I went flying off the platform. The platform was about 2 feet off the ground. There's no ropes in these. It's like a boxing ring, but no ropes.
Yeah.
I wasn't hurt. I thought to myself, well, I've tried going straight with this guy, but I'm like 190 pounds. He's like 330 or something. So it's not going to work. It's like going against a tank.
Yeah.
But what I did, I started moving and changing direction. And then when he thought I was going back, I went forward, hit him between the eyes. His eyes crossed and he was unconscious. He woke up in the ambulance. So that's what Tai Chi is. It's not opposing what's there. It's making use of the situation. He because of his size, he found it difficult to change direction.
Yeah.
And that's the key to Tai Chi, is changing in a harmonious way.
Yeah, it's with yin and yang. What people don't understand is it seems like change is the key thing there, and change in relationship to what's happening. Very Taoist, kind of not going against the flow of things. And I think almost implicitly in Western culture, there's this idea that we just have to push harder, stronger, faster, more, and sort of straight line, harder, faster. And the idea of kind of adaptation, flow, listening, all these things that make Aikido, Tai Chi, almost any sophisticated Asian martial art really work, is quite countercultural in a way that's just sort of subtly implicit. It's implicit that we don't do that generally in our culture.
Well, I think he's exactly right. A lot of people, if they don't get what they want with a push, they'll try a harder push, and it'll escalate. Using a lot of force, they're not getting anywhere. I mean, it's like the definition of insanity. Asking or doing the same thing again and again and expecting a different result.
Yeah.
Not going to happen. You need to change your game plan if it's not working out, and change it pretty quick as well.
And what I tend to see really in the world today, like I'm doing corporate stress management, I'm doing, work with all sorts of people. I was in Manchester working with the Arts Council yesterday, in pretty varied groups of people I work with, is just people being exhausted. And I wonder if that sort of constantly fighting against the currents is just exhausting. And I wonder if our culture isn't almost hitting a kind of critical point where just everyone's tired now. Everyone's burnt out from not going with the seasons and the flow, and even, going against in a conversation, for example, like, how do we go with things like, you fell off your chair because you Parkinson's. I went, okay, let's go with that. That's what's going on right now. And do you know what I mean by the exhaustion of going against the flow?
A very good example, practical example of this from Tai Chi is the guard. Now, boxers have a guard, and the fists are clenched, obviously, because they're wrapped and they're in gloves. But if you've got clenched fists, you're hard, and it's hard to change from clenched fists to open hands. If you've got open hands to start with, your hands are soft. They can change to fists. They can thrust with the fingers.
Yeah.
Arm, grip, grab. So from soft to hard is much easier.
Yeah.
From hard to soft. So
nice.
People, if they're on kind of a tense, if they have a kind of tense attitude, mentally or physically, they're going to use a lot more energy than if they start from a neutral kind of position, like this open and handed guard I'm mentioning. And then they can switch if necessary. Yeah.
So they can go from that relaxed to hard if they need to, but it's tricky when you're tense to then suddenly relax. And I always like to involve listeners in this, and it's quite interesting to look at how your hands are. If people are listening to this, they might be walking or sitting on the subway in, Australia or New York or anywhere. And it's interesting to look at your hands. Are they kind of clenched, maybe not a full fist, but often people's habitual hands are a little bit tense or extended tense, can tense out or tense in, as opposed to sort of soft and relaxed. And I think it's just an interesting thing that I try and notice in my days, that the hands are often in one of those three states, either tense, extended, tense, contracted, or a bit more relaxed. I guess you also could sort of see the sort of floppy hand, the hand that's just kind of like a wet rag kind of thing, which isn't really yin, is it? That sort of floppy state.
So Tai Chi classes talk about Sum Fei Sum. Sum Fei Sum means relaxed but not relaxed. What it's getting at is being relaxed but not floppy, like you're saying.
Yeah.
There's a certain definition. Although the fists are not clenched, the fingers are pointing more or less straight. They're not floppy at all. So you avoid extremes.
Yeah.
Extreme. We don't want floppiness, and we don't want stiffness either.
So yin and yang is really about movement. It's about going with the flow of nature. I mean, please say more. I'd love to hear more about yin and yang from your expertise.
How Tai Chi works is the weight transfers forward and back with the technique. The body contracts and expands with the technique. A lot of people do Tai Chi with the arms. They're not doing it with the body. So again, going back to the Nigong, the internal strength, it helps training opening and closing, opening the joints, opening the rib cage, closing it as well when appropriate. And you use this in a health point of view, through the form being slow, raising the hands, it opens the rib cage, lowering the hands, rib cage closes. There's a pumping action going on. There's a stimulation to the circulation going on. There's a lot of things happening. Another thing that people are not aware about with Tai Chi is internal alchemy.
Okay, what's that?
Chinese internal alchemy deals with so-called three treasures: Qi, Jing, and Shun. The Qi, a lot of people heard the term Qi or Qigong, which basically is exercises which involve the circulation. So the character for Qi is quite interesting. It's a pot of rice plant giving off steam. So there's a chemical change taking place. Just like when we breathe in oxygen, breathe out carbon dioxide and methane gas. So there's a change takes place. If you've got a good supply of Qi, then your Jing is good. The Jing is the internal essences, the saliva, the semen, the vaginal fluid. So this needs to be regulated by the Qi circulation. And then you've got Shun, which is the spiritual energy. The character for Jing is a rice plant, and a character meaning to give birth. So again, there's the idea of growth and life, of change. And then the spiritual essence, the character Shun, is a character consisting of a man reaching to the sky, and the sky represented by heaven, earth, and the stars. So if there's psychological pressure on you reacting badly to it, very often your body posture will be bad, it'll be tense, your breathing will be shallow, things will not be working well. So Tai Chi is to try to have the optimum posture in every situation. There's another term in the classics that talks about the strength comes from the spine. Spinal column is the exact center of the body. We use this in two ways: rotation and flexion. It's the same in golf, it's the same in tennis. But Tai Chi is particularly good in this because it doesn't do it in a way that damages the spine. We incline the weight forward when the push is going forward or a punch is going forward. So the skeleton, the spinal column is stretched because it's inclined forward. Then we bring the weight back for the next technique. The spinal column is erect, so there's gravitational pressure. So there's a pumping action going on. You know the central nervous system runs through the spinal column. If the spinal column is not correct, the central nervous system is not going to be correct. So it's all interconnected. So that's the beauty of Tai Chi compared with something like yoga or Pilates, which I've got great respect for. But it's a self-defense system. It's also an internal alchemy system. It gets everything pumping and going.
Interesting. And in terms of sort of life, right? So we can talk about yin and yang as, this physical expression in Tai Chi. How does that look like in a kind of daily life context outside of the kind of martial arts context?
Well, body language. If you've got tense body language, people, even they haven't studied body language, they can sense it.
Yeah, a dog can feel it, right?
So I used to teach management of aggression to security guards.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the things initially we called the courses self-defense courses. Effectively, it was using Tai Chi to control and restrain unruly people. But I later realized the first thing was the body language. Now, if you as a security guard or a police officer go into a stance, a martial arts stance with a fist clenched, it looks extremely aggressive.
Yeah.
It also can provoke the other person to be even more aggressive towards you.
Yeah.
I used to teach them to use the open palm gesture, which is the way politicians and other people are trying to make us believe them, put their hands to show they've got nothing to hide. It's relaxed, it controls the distance, it performs the same function as a guard, but the body language is much more positive. It's kind of friendly.
Yeah. And in those situations, my experience is the more relaxed I am, the less likely someone is to feel fearful or aggressive, and not to treat me as an aggressor or a victim even, because a victim isn't relaxed and an aggressor isn't relaxed. Or even I'm in a sales meeting in Amsterdam a few days ago with a big corporate client, and, they're very stressed and they're kind of putting the pressure on me, like, why should we do this with you? And just being relaxed in that situation was very kind of high status point of view, very much like, look, I can take this or leave this. And interestingly there, I almost turn the situation around where they start trying to sell the job to me rather than me being the kind of one who's trying to hard sell them. Simply by being relaxed in that situation, the implicit message they got is like, okay, this guy knows what he's doing and he's not desperate for the job, so he's probably pretty good. That's that sort of being relaxed in a sales situation. We're not just talking about situations of confrontation.
Absolutely, and again, it's some similarities to transactional analysis. It's being the right kind of person, not being overly critical, like a critical parent, not being too curious, like an adolescent, getting themselves into trouble. You don't know where the line is. You don't even know there are lines sometimes. being a job's worth, not having any empathy, people like Mr. Spock from Star Trek. So, the day-to-day life can be affected by all these things as well. The practice of Tai Chi is going to affect every aspect of it if you do it seriously.
Mm-hmm. And now, what is the thing you find yourself using, as it were, most frequently in day-to-day life?
Well, there's no one thing except I would say the Neigong. The Neigong, what I like about it is, as a Parkinson's sufferer, you need to retain basic strength. So as well as the Neigong, I use light weights every day to retain basic strength. But also, the Neigong has some meditative aspects. There's a mantra we use in one of the Neigong exercises as well. So that acts to kind of calm the mind. It's very soft. It's very relaxing, very soothing. So I really find it helps with the Parkinson's. Some of the Neigong is very tough. If I need more of a workout, I'll do those exercises. They're more emphatic, more powerful. The structure of the body is changed by the exercises.
It's interesting. I've met a lot of people who start out in martial arts, either on the hard end of things, competitions, or tough training, and then ultimately what they get interested in is A, just daily life, and B, health. This is really the biggest threat to people's well-being. Unless you're a doorman or a policeman, as you were, the average person, the biggest threat to them is their health. It's not someone attacking them. I live in Brighton. It's a pretty safe town. I'm not dealing with triads on a day-to-day basis, but I'm starting to put on a bit of weight as I get older, for example. So it's like these are the real threats to people, for most people.
Well, Chinese talk about not just longevity, but Chang Sheng Bu Lao. Chang Sheng Bu Lao means long life without old. So what it's getting at is having a long life, but not having the infirmities of old age. I've got one of the infirmities of old age, but there we are. That's unfortunate. But it's to keep the body as fit as possible. And that is being done by the training.
I remember one of my Aikido teachers, William Smith, saying to me, because he was, had cancer and was pretty old when I was training with him, he said, you need to be old without being old. And what he meant was, to be old as in not aggressive or pushy or, actually going with the flow and being relaxed. He said, not using strength in your practice, but without being old, don't get decrepit. And he was still on the mat till, very close up to the day that he died practicing. And that's, in our culture, we sort of have a view of old as kind of decrepit, and that doesn't need to be the case.
Well, at the other extreme, we've got people who are too gung-ho.
Yeah.
They practice martial arts and they're a danger to themselves and others because of their approach. They damage their bodies, which is not what martial arts is about. So if you are getting damaged, then you have to question your training methods.
Yeah. Okay. And kind of the modern state of Tai Chi, what's your opinion on kind of Tai Chi as it exists currently in the UK or other places?
I think it's given a lot of pleasure, and it's been good for the health of thousands of people. The Tai Chi Union for Great Britain, of which I'm a founding member, we have about 1,000 instructor members up and down the country.
Oh.
A lot of Tai Chi going on, but most people are just doing form. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you don't know the applications of the movements, it's like you learn a song in another language, but you don't actually understand what the words are.
Yeah.
You can't put the correct emphasis on it. So even with my infirmity, I believe in a holistic approach with Tai Chi. So everybody, as far as possible, does some applications, some pushing hands, some partner work. If you only do the solo form of the Neigong, Tai Chi is only three-dimensional. If you're doing movements with other people, like pushing hands or wrestling or doing applications, then it becomes four-dimensional. You've got to harmonize with another external entity. So Aikido, if you look at the term Aikido, Do is the same as Dao and Taoism. It's the way. Ai-Ki is to harmonize with the Ki. The Ki in Chinese is Qi, that I was talking about earlier. So you're harmonizing with the other person's energy, if you like. And the other thing that's interesting about the Japanese is they divided their martial arts into two. So you have Judo and Jujutsu.
Yeah.
Soft way of softness, like Taoism, Tao. And the others were doing Jutsu, like Jujutsu, which means technique of softness. So the people doing the Do, like Judo, the martial art was a way of life.
Yeah.
The other people were more kind of hardcore and into the fighting side. That's a simplistic examination, but it does express the reality of it.
Yeah, I use that distinction even with yoga teachers now. I say, look, you can do, there's technique and this is a way of life. And there's nothing wrong with doing jitsu, which is learning the techniques, the shapes, the forms, and it has a practical kind of application there. But it's also, are you interested in this as a do? And I feel like if you just do the do, it can all get a bit abstract and philosophical. And for me, I'm not interested in just doing the techniques, even though that might be practical if you're a policeman or a doorman or something. I feel like that can, if for me, what's really interesting is the art as way of life. How flexible do I need to be? To do yoga, it's like, all right, I'm flexible. So what? But how does that influence me as a person? How does that impact my life? That's the kind of critical thing for me.
Yeah, I think, as I said, the best approach, if you can do it, is the holistic approach. You can do all the different aspects to some extent, to some degree. The full contact stuff is only a minority of a minority.
Yeah. Yeah. And, sometimes it's a time of life, isn't it? Maybe when you're younger and you feel testosterone or whatever. What's most interesting to you in the art currently?
I think it's always been the same. It's change, the ability to change. That's what I concentrate on, being appropriate to any situation. Yeah. Whether a verbal one like now or a physical one. Mm-hmm. It's important to do what's correct. So being a police officer and arresting someone, you don't normally follow the same procedure physically as somebody that's defending themselves. Yeah. Your mission is essentially to control and restrain, not to get into a fight. It's not self-defense per se. It's a bit more than that. Yeah. So use appropriate techniques according to the situation.
Yeah, no, even when I'm teaching psychology and embodiment generally, I'll talk about being adaptable to the situation. I was teaching some managers yesterday and it's like, well, what you're doing is fine sometimes. And if you do that all the time, then that's perhaps not so helpful. If you're only assertive or if you're only, you're a great listener, but you don't stand up for yourself or the other way around. And I usually present them, any model I'm teaching in embodiment as like, look, what you're doing adapted to serve a purpose. And it's, one tool in the box. Would you like some more tools so you can be more adaptive to suit different types of circumstances? And I feel like that model is quite attractive to people because it doesn't kind of pathologize anyone.
Well, I think, as I said, a lot of people, particularly guys are generally very bad at reading body language. Women are much more subtle than we are. And I think Tai Chi helps you to have a more positive body language. Yeah. And if your body's not under tension, you're going to breathe better. You're going to have better circulation. You're going to have a better mental attitude. So it's all interrelated, the internal memory, the health aspects, and also the martial aspects.
Great. Where else? Anything else you're particularly passionate about that you'd like to talk about?
I think it's good also to read. There's a lot of interesting stuff. People think Tai Chi teachers should be vegetarians, maybe, a bit hippie-ish. I think, Tai Chi is suitable for everybody, but not the same Tai Chi necessarily. Yeah. There's loads of Tai Chi teachers out there. Most of them are fairly okay. But it's to find one who's suitable for you. Yeah. The approach that's best for you. So what might suit a guy in his 60s like myself who's starting to do Tai Chi, and what might suit a 20-year-old like when I started Tai Chi is a bit different. But actually, I'm still doing a lot of martial stuff. When I'm doing seminars and stuff, I'm teaching more martial stuff than the health stuff.
And it's interesting, it's nice that there is diversity in different arts like Tai Chi or yoga or Aikido or whatever, because different things suit different people. And, I do feel that almost every art has like a stereotype that people try and force you into. Like, you're a guy from Glasgow who's been in the police. That doesn't fit the stereotype of the kind of hippie Tai Chi teacher. And it does feel like as a teacher of different arts, there's almost a stereotype people want to put you into.
Yeah. I like poetry. I like Chinese poetry. There's a very good poet called Li Bai. He lived in the Tang Dynasty. He was a swordsman. And he mocked Confucius. Confucius said, when I was 15, I loved learning. Li Bai said, when I was 15, I liked the sword. So he was an intellectual, but he was also a swordsman. And he actually killed with the sword. He got into fights. He was a very interesting character. So one of the interesting things with Tai Chi is how it fits in the culture, Chinese culture. So the names of some of the techniques are quite interesting. One of them is taking off the boots while drunk. This is a saber technique, Tai Chi saber. So this technique is a story about Li Bai. He was in the imperial court. He was drunk. He insulted the prime minister, who was a eunuch, and he made an enemy for life because he said to the eunuch, "Take off my boots." This is when he was drunk. So that's a cultural reference that most foreigners, even most Chinese, won't get.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fun in Tai Chi with these kind of things, if you can get the right literature.
And do you think, because it sometimes seems quite inaccessible as other Chinese Kung Fu too, different Chinese martial arts, because it's such a rich cultural heritage, China, and, you lived out in Hong Kong, you had some years of exposure to it. Do you think you need to understand Chinese culture to really get Tai Chi, or do you think sometimes that's a barrier for people, because it's pretty different culturally from, say, the UK?
I think there's a problem insofar as it depends on the teacher's knowledge and willingness to share. Everything comes down to three things in the end: time, energy, and money. And the most precious of these is time. You can get back more energy, you can get back more money eventually, but you never get time back.
Yeah.
The thing is not to waste your time, but whether in your practice, in your studies, in your life, don't waste your time. And if you don't follow Wu Wei, which is what I was talking about earlier, if you don't go with the flow, you try and go against it, you will waste a lot of time and energy.
Yep. Yeah, energy, yeah. So in terms of understanding Chinese culture, do you feel that is essential, or do you feel that something, as Tai Chi lives in the West for longer, do you think that will influence it, change it?
I think Tai Chi's become a bit westernized, but that's not always a bad thing. Because the Chinese way of teaching generally is I do, you follow.
Yeah.
No explanation, and it was considered a bit rude to ask the teacher questions.
Yeah.
But the point is to ask the teacher good questions, not stupid questions. And if you don't understand, you need to. But people can only teach you at the level you're capable of learning at. If they teach you at a level above that, you're not going to take it in. So what one guy can do in terms of fighting is not the same as another person's potentiality. Just the same from an intellectual point of view, somebody may understand Wu Wei, but somebody else just completely doesn't get it.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a matter of luck that you find the right teacher and the right approach for you.
Makes sense. Okay. Well, thank you, Dan, for your time. I appreciate it. I need to wrap this up now. Where can people, two last things, where can people find out more about you and your work?
I've got a website, taichitran.co.uk, or just type up Dan Doherty Tai Chi. I think I'm the only Dan Doherty Tai Chi on the.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I typed in it, and it worked. Yeah.
You can find me. There's also, if you're interested in picking up Tai Chi somewhere else in the country, Tai Chi for Great Britain, lots of good instructors listed on the website.
Great. And do you have a final message about the body for everyone out there listening?
Yeah, I think the body needs to change, and the mind needs to change too. Be prepared to do that. If you're hurting your body, talk to your teacher. There's something wrong in your practice.
Yeah.
Talk immediately to the teacher. Because all these methods, if there's a good teacher, they'll do a good job for you.
Yeah.
You must communicate.
Okay, Dan, thank you so much for your time today.
It's a pleasure, Mark. Thanks very much.
If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to get more. If you'd like to help us build the Embodied Tribe, leave a review on iTunes or share this on your social media. If you're interested in training globally, sign up to receive the newsletter at embodiedfacilitator.com. Until next time, welcome home to the body.